Tucker Moneymaker, please.
Thank you. On behalf of myself and thousands of other citizens from the state of North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia, which I happen to be a Prozac Survivor Director for these 3 states, I want to say thank you for allowing the public to come up here and speak and voice their opinion about this dangerous drug. And I also want to tell everybody that these are real stories, real people. This is not something wrote down on a piece of paper, something that somebody wrote up somewhere. These are real things that's happening. My story is also real. It's just a real nightmare, something I have to live with every day. I had 2 sons, David Lee, age 8, Billy, 16. The wife, 20 years, all gone. I'll tell you why. March of this year, my wife, Sandra, had some nerve problems. She was asked to go be evaluated. The doctor put her on Prozac. He told her she was depressed because she was having nerve problems. Now, I want you to keep this in mind, how my wife was, just a little short story. My wife was the kind of mother that always put the kids first. She would take her kids back and forth to school every day. My 8-year-old never rode a school bus. Wife was tied up in the church, tied up in Cub Scouts, room mother at school. I heard these people talking about scientific data. I want to show them some scientific data. This is scientific data right here. When all y'all look at this is scientific data. For those that don't say we have scientific data. I hadn't slept for about 2 hours since Sunday, so I want to apologize if I sound a little shaky. After being on Prozac for 21 days, my wife shot and killed both of these 2 boys right here. She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice. Now she's in jail for murder. This is the kind of lady that never took a drug, no mixed drinks, no alcohol, no reason to be depressed, just some nerve problems, like everybody has from time to time. I'm depressed. I've got legitimate reasons to be depressed. I want to ask y'all, don't let this happen to nobody else. These are real people. You know, these murders and things are senseless. You know, it's time to put a stop to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you get 5 minutes.
Okay. I am Ann Blake Tracy, head of the International Coalition for Drug Awareness. I am the author of Prozac, Panacea, or Pandora. My house is mortgaged to the hilt to pay for the last 15 years that I have devoted to nothing but research on SSRI antidepressants and to fund my trip here. I've testified for 12 and a half years in court cases involving these drugs. Research on serotonin has been clear from the very beginning that the most damaging thing that could be done to the serotonergic system would be to impair one's ability to metabolize serotonin. Yet that is exactly how SSRI antidepressants exert their effects. For decades, research has shown that impairing serotonin metabolism will produce nightmares, hot flashes, migraines, pains around the heart, difficulty breathing, a worsening of bronchial complaints, tension and anxiety which appear from out of nowhere, depression, suicide, especially very violent suicide and repeated attempts, hostility, violent crime, arson, substance abuse, including cravings for alcohol and other drugs, psychosis, mania, organic brain disease, autism, anorexia, reckless driving, Alzheimer's, impulsive behavior with no concern for punishment, and argumentative behavior. How anyone ever thought it would be therapeutic to chemically induce these reactions is beyond me. Yet these reactions are exactly what we've witnessed in our society over the past decade and a half as a result of the widespread use of these drugs. Can you remember 2 decades ago when depressed people used to slip away quietly to kill themselves rather than killing everyone around them and then themselves, as they do while taking an SSRI antidepressant? A study out of the University of Southern California in 1996 looked at a group of mutant mice that had been genetically engineered in an experiment that had gone terribly wrong. They were the most violent creatures they had ever witnessed. They were born lacking the MAOA enzyme, which metabolizes serotonin. The end result is the same as if they were taking an SSRI antidepressant, which does inhibit the metabolism of serotonin. This has been a national holocaust. It must end. These are extremely dangerous drugs that should have been banned as similar drugs were in the past. As a society, we once thought LSD and PCP to be miracle medications. We have never seen drugs so similar to LSD and PCP as these SSRI antidepressants are. All of these drugs produce dreaming during periods of wakefulness. The serotonin, the higher serotonin levels, overstimulate the brainstem, leading to a lack of muscle paralysis. That was seen clearly in the case of comedian Phil Hartman and his wife Bryn in the terrible murder-suicide induced by Zoloft. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for...
My name is Margaret McCaffrey, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I've raised 8 children. 2 of them became doctors. My daughter Margaret, a neurologist, died a little over a year ago, and I firmly believe the drug Prozac caused her to commit suicide. She was very dedicated to her profession. She was a nurse before going to medical school. She took Prozac to see her through a very stressful job situation. She believed it was safe and not addictive. She moved here to Baltimore in July of 1990 to begin a second fellowship. She had bought a new car, had a lovely apartment, and the best of her profession lay ahead. There was no warning. She spoke to her family on Saturday, and on Monday evening she was found almost dead. I hope and pray that Eli Lilly and the FDA will listen to me and remove this drug from the market before any more innocent lives are lost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 35, please.
My name is Richard Mack, and I'm a retired law enforcement officer and sheriff from Arizona. My expertise in that field was juvenile delinquency, school violence, and narcotics investigations. My first experience with SRIs was when I was a parent of a second grader. My wife and I were called into the school, and our son had a problem staying in his chair. What was the government school's answer? Drug your son into submission so he'll stay in his chair. We refused, and we thank God now that we did. Our son turned out just fine, played basketball, baseball, and excelled at school and sports. As sheriff of a small community in Arizona, we had an abnormal amount of high rate of suicide and teen violence. I am just an investigator. I just present the facts. One thing that we could not ignore was the circumstantial evidence that the common denominator in all of these cases was the victims or perpetrators were on SSRIs. In investigating these events, it became quite commonplace for all of us to ask the same question as we got to the next event of horrified and traumatized people and families. You've heard from many of them today. Some people don't have the adverse effects reaction to these drugs. Some do. I learned the same with LSD when I investigated that as an undercover narcotics officer. I can only say that the evidence is mounting over and over, as did our investigations. We cannot, as law enforcement officials, ignore such circumstantial evidence. I doubt very seriously if you could either. I'm an advocate for states' rights, and I do not believe that if the FDA fails to take action, that state and local authorities will have to. Thank you.
Thank you.